Dear students, today we are going to discuss the role of the United Nations in achieving sustainable developmental goals. Dear students, while discussing the role of the United Nations in achieving sustainable development goals, it is important to understand the historical context of sustainable development goals. As I told you in my last lecture, that sustainable development goals were built upon the Millennium Development Goals. Therefore, it's important to understand at first what are Millennium Development Goals and why there was a transition from Millennium Development Goals to the Sustainable Development Goals. Millennium Development Goals were a set of 8 international development goals set by the UN in 2000. These goals aim to address various aspects of poverty, education, gender equality, child mortality, maternal health, disease prevention, environmental sustainability, and global partnerships. The Millennium Development Goals provided a framework for global development efforts from 2000 to 2015. Dear students, while progress was made in many areas under the Millennium Development Goals, but still some goals were not achieved universally or sufficiently. Therefore, critics have pointed out certain gaps in the Millennium Development Goals, such as limited focus on environmental sustainability, inequality within and between countries, and the need for a more comprehensive approach to sustainable development. Therefore, keeping these limitations and criticisms in mind, in 2015, the UN has adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. It is this Agenda 2030 which introduced the Sustainable Development Goals as a successor framework to the Millennium Development Goals. The Sustainable Development Goals consist of 17 interconnected goals covering a broad range of issues like poverty, inequality, climate change, environmental degradation, peace, and justice. So, unlike the Millennium Development Goals, the Sustainable Development Goals are universal. These are applicable to all countries regardless of their level of development. So, there are some key differences between Millennium Development Goals and Sustainable Developmental Goals. Like the Sustainable Development Goals are more comprehensive and integrated. It tries to address social, economic, and environmental dimensions of sustainable development. The Sustainable Development Goals emphasize inclusivity, so no one can be left behind, and it promotes partnerships across all sectors and all stakeholders. Unlike the top down approach of the Millennium Development Goals, the Sustainable Development Goals were developed through a more inclusive and participatory process involving governments, civil society, academia, and the private sector. Dear students, now we are going to discuss the UN's mandate in promoting sustainable development. Dear students, the UN recognizes that sustainable development is crucial for the well being of people. It is important for the entire planet. Its mandate in promoting sustainable development is outlined in various documents, including the UN Charter and mainly in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable development. There are certain components of the UN's mandate, like UN raises awareness about the importance of sustainable development through campaigns, events, and educational programs. The United Nations also develops policies, guidelines to guide countries in integrating sustainability into their development plans and strategies. United Nations also provides technical assistance and resources to help countries to build the necessary skills and infrastructure for sustainable development. Their students, UN also facilitates cooperation among countries, international organizations, civil society, and the private sector to address shared challenges and achieve common goals. The United Nations, lastly, also monitors progress towards sustainable development goals. It tracks indicators and publishes reports to assess global trends and identify areas for improvement in order to achieve the sustainable development goals. Dear students, now let's have a look at the key agencies of UN in implementing sustainable development goals. There are some agencies of the United Nations which are involved in the implementation of the sustainable goals, like United Nations Development Program. This UNDP is the UN's global development network. It works in over 170 countries. Its primary focus is on eradicating poverty, reducing inequalities, and promoting sustainable development. UNDP also provides technical assistance, policy advice, and funding to support countries in achieving the sustainable development goals. It also helps governments to integrate the sustainable development goals into their national development plans and mobilize resources for sustainable development goals related initiatives. Then there is another agency, United Nations Children's Fund, which is known as UNICEF. UNICEF is dedicated to promote the rights and well-being of children worldwide. It works closely with several sustainable development goals like child survival, education, health, and protection. UNICEF supports countries in providing essential services to children, such as immunization, education, clean water, nutrition. It also advocates for child rights. It mobilizes resources for children in emergencies and promote child participation in decision-making processes. Another important UN agency is World Health Organization. WHO is the UN agency which is responsible for international public health. It plays a crucial role in advancing several health related sustainable development goals, including those focusing on reducing maternal and child mortality, combating infectious diseases, and promoting universal health coverage. WHO also provides technical expertise, guidelines, and support to countries in strengthening their health systems, improving access to healthcare service, and addressing global health challenges such as pandemics and non communicable diseases. Another important agency is United Nations Environment Programme, UNEP. It is the leading global environmental authority within the UN system. Its mandate includes promoting sustainable environmental management and addressing environmental challenges like climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution, and resource depletion. UNEP supports countries in implementing environmentally sustainable policies and practices. It promotes international cooperation on environmental issues and also raises awareness about the importance of environmental conservation for sustainable development. Their students, another important agency which is involved in achieving sustainable development goals is Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. This Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations leads international efforts to combat hunger, improve nutrition, to promote sustainable agriculture. Its work contributes to several sustainable development goals related to food security, sustainable agriculture, and rural development. This Food and Agriculture Organization also provides technical assistance, policy advice, and capacity building to countries to enhance agricultural productivity, to reduce food losses and wastage, and promote sustainable natural resource management. Another important agency is United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO. UNESCO promotes education, science, culture and communication as fundamental pillars of sustainable development. Its work aligns with several sustainable development goals, including those focusing on quality education, gender equality, cultural preservation, and access to information. UNESCO also supports countries in improving education system, protecting cultural heritage, promoting scientific research, and also promoting intercultural dialogue and cooperation. So, dear students, these are just a few examples of many UN agencies which are actually involved in implementing the Sustainable Development Goals. Each agency brings unique expertise and resources to the table, working collaboratively to advance the global agenda for sustainable development. Dear students, now let's have a look at the UN's role in advancing sustainable development goals. As you know, the UN plays a crucial role in advancing the sustainable development goals through various means, like global leadership and advocacy. It means the UN provides global leadership and advocacy for the sustainable development goals. It emphasizes on the importance of sustainable development as a universal agenda. Through high-level summits, conferences, and campaigns, the UN raises awareness about the sustainable development goals. It mobilizes political will and promotes action at the national and international levels. UN also develops policies, guidelines, and frameworks to support member states in integrating the sustainable development goals into their national development plans and strategies. Agencies such as UNDP, UNEP provide technical assistance and expertise to help countries to align their policies and programs with the Sustainable Development Goals. The UN also supports countries in building institutional capacity, enhancing data collection and analysis, strengthening monitoring and evaluation systems for tracking progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. Through initiatives like the Capacity Development for Sustainable Development Goals program, The UN provides training tools and resources to empower governments, civil society organizations, and other stakeholders to implement the Sustainable Development Goals effectively. Dear students, United Nations also mobilizes financial resources and investments to support Sustainable Development Goals implementation, particularly in developing countries and in vulnerable communities. Agencies like the UNDP, UNCDF, these work to unlock public and private financing, promote innovative financing mechanisms, and facilitate partnerships for sustainable development projects. The United Nations also promotes multi stakeholder partnerships and collaborations to address complex and interconnected challenges associated with sustainable development goals. Initiatives such as the UN Global Compact, Sustainable Energy for All, and the Every Woman, Every Child campaign mobilize businesses, civil society organizations, philanthropic foundations, and governments to contribute resources, expertise, and innovative solutions towards achieving specific sustainable development goals. Dear students, United Nations also advocates for inclusive and equitable development, emphasizing the importance of leaving no one behind in the pursuit of the sustainable development goals. It works to address systematic inequalities, discrimination, and social exclusion based on factors such as gender, age, ethnicity, disability, and socioeconomic states. The United Nations also monitors progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. It tracks indicators, it produces regular reports to assess global trends. It also identifies gaps and informs policy decisions. Through mechanisms like voluntary national reviews, the UN promotes transparency, accountability, and peer learning among countries to accelerate sustainable development goals implementation. So, dear students, we can say that the United Nations role in advancing the sustainable development goals includes global leadership, policy development, capacity building, resource mobilization, partnership promotion, advocacy and accountability mechanisms. By leveraging its power, expertise, and network, the UN plays a central role in driving collective action and mobilizing efforts towards a more sustainable and equitable future for all. Dear students, now we will try to understand various challenges which United Nations is facing while trying to achieve the sustainable development goals. As we have discussed that the United Nations plays a central role in advancing the sustainable development goals. But at the same time, it also faces several challenges in achieving them effectively. Some of the challenges are like limited resources, means the UN depends on voluntary contributions from member states, which may not always be sufficient to meet the funding needs for sustainable development goals implementation. So, limited financial resources can constrain the UN's ability to achieve the sustainable development goals. Another limitation is complexity and interconnectedness. As you know, the sustainable development goals are interconnected and address a wide range of social, economic, and environmental issues. Therefore, implementing them requires a holistic and integrated approach, which can be challenging due to the complexity of the goals. Another challenge is inequality and marginalization. means addressing inequalities within and between countries is central to the sustainable development goals. However, entrenched disparities based on factors such as income, gender, ethnicity, and geography pose significant challenges in achieving inclusive and equitable development. Marginalized groups like women, children, persons with disabilities, refugees often face barriers to have access to the resources, services, and opportunities. Achieving the sustainable development goals also requires strong political will and commitment from government at the national and international levels. However, political instability, conflicts, corruption, and governance challenges in some countries can hinder progress towards these goals of sustainable development. Lack of coherence and coordination among government agencies and stakeholders may also impair effective sustainable development goals implementation. Another challenge is in the form of data availability and quality. As you know that UN is monitoring progress toward the sustainable development goals. But this progress can be known by having accurate and timely data. But there are many countries which are facing challenge in collecting, analyzing and reporting data due to capacity constraints, lack of resources and methodological issues. Therefore, data gaps and inconsistencies can hinder efforts to track progress, to identify priorities, and to allocate resources effectively. Another challenge is climate change and environmental degradation. Environmental degradation and climate change also pose significant threats to sustainable development. Achieving environmental sustainability goals such as those related to climate action, biodiversity conservation, and pollution reduction requires urgent and ambitious action. However, challenges such as inadequate mitigation and adaptation measures, resource depletion, and ecosystem degradation continue to undermine progress in these areas. These goals also face challenge in the form of global crises and emergencies. Global crises such as pandemics, conflicts, natural disasters, and humanitarian emergencies can derail progress towards the sustainable development goals. These crises increase poverty, hunger, inequality, and other development challenges. Therefore, these things require immediate humanitarian assistance and long term recovery efforts. Responding to crisis while advancing sustainable goals requires ability, resilience, and international cooperation. Lastly, demographic trends, including population growth, urbanization, and migration, also pose challenges and opportunities for sustainable development. Addressing the needs of growing urban populations, ensuring access to basic services, and promoting inclusive urban development are critical for achieving the sustainable development goals. However, rapid urbanization and unplanned growth can strain infrastructure, can increase social inequalities, therefore can contribute to environmental degradation. So, dear students, addressing these challenges requires collective action, innovative approach, and sustained commitment from governments, the private sector, civil society, and international organizations. The UN no doubt plays a central role in facilitating cooperation, promoting dialogue, mobilizing resources to overcome these obstacles and advance the global agenda for sustainable development. Lastly, let us discuss some successful initiatives and projects made by UN to achieve sustainable goals and developments. Sustainable development goals and what lessons can be learned from these successful implementation of these projects. Some example of successful projects initiated by the United Nations to achieve sustainable development goals are like the Solar for Health initiative. This initiative aims to improve access to health care in remote areas by providing solar power solutions to health facilities by ensuring reliable electricity for essential medical services. The initiative contributes to money finance for the well being of the people. So, what lessons can be learned from this project? The initiative demonstrates the importance of innovative partnerships and technology solutions in addressing healthcare challenges in undeveloped communities. Another important project is the Green Climate Fund. The Green Climate Fund was established by the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. It provides financial support to developing countries to implement climate mitigation and adaptation projects. So, this aim of this project is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to enhance resilience to climate change impacts. So, what lessons can be learned from the success of this project? The Green Climate Fund highlights the importance of dedicated funding mechanisms and international cooperation in addressing climate change and promoting sustainable development. And the successful project was the Scaling Up Nutrition Movement. This Scaling Up Nutrition Movement was led by UN and other partner organizations. The aim of this movement was to improve nutrition outcomes by mobilizing political commitment and action at the national and global levels. Through multi-sectoral approach, this movement supports countries in achieving targets related to nutrition, health, and food security. So, what lessons can be learned from this movement? From this movement, it can be learned that the coordinated efforts, advocacy, and policy coherence is important in order to address any complex challenge such as malnutrition. The access to COVID 19 tools accelerator. It was launched in response to the COVID 19 pandemic. This project is a global collaboration which was led by World Health Organization and other partners to accelerate the development, production, and equitable distribution of COVID 19 vaccines, tests, and treatments. This initiative helped many countries to prevent the spread of COVID in their areas. So, what lessons can be learned from this act? It can be highlighted that the importance of international solidarity, innovation, and partnerships is essential in order to address global health emergencies, in order to advance health equality in the globe. The UN Women's Empowerment Principles. The UN Women's Empowerment Principles is a joint initiative of UN Women and UN Global Compact. It provides a framework for businesses to promote gender equality and women's empowerment in workplaces, in marketplaces, in community by encouraging companies to adopt gender responsive policies and practices. This project has led to the empowerment of women. Therefore, these women's empowerment principles demonstrate the importance of engaging the private sector as a partner in achieving gender equality and promoting inclusive development. These successful initiatives and projects highlight the importance of innovation, partnership, and holistic approach in advancing the sustainable development goals. By learning from these successful examples, policymakers, practitioners, and stakeholders can replicate successful approaches and accelerate progress towards achieving the sustainable development goals. In today's lecture, we have seen that the United Nations plays an important role in advancing the sustainable development goals through global leadership, policy development, capacity building, resource mobilization, etc. At the same time, this UN is facing many challenges in achieving the sustainable development goals like limited resources, complexity, inequality, and global crisis. However, the UN can drive collective action towards achieving a more sustainable and equitable future for all. By learning from successful initiatives and projects, stakeholders, policymakers can replicate effective approaches and accelerate progress towards realizing the Sustainable Development Goals vision of a better world for present and future generations. Thank you.